Good day and welcome to IGSTS. I'm J Floss. You can find me on my Twitter at The Real J Floss. That's THA. On Instagram, I'm Floss408. This is a special episode here for me, and I hope it enlightens the viewers, the listeners, and people who just took time to support the boy. I like to talk about this article that was published by Players Tribune entitled Privileged by Kyle Korver. But before we get into that, I'd like to send a shout out to some team members of the IGSTS family. We're going to start with at Thrax Beats 408. Then we got at D Shabazz 4. Then we got at R_Gomez 12 and at S.1000. Appreciate y'all, man. What's up? So I heard about this article and I heard some viewpoints, and before I really bought in or just took the word of someone else who read it, I decided myself go ahead and just check out the article myself, because this is something that I feel, as a man who's lived in America all his life and is on the other side of what we call privilege, that I'm an expert in this field when it comes to the non-privileged side. But at the same time, I'm an expert to the privileged side. And I feel myself that I'm a privileged individual. So I like to speak on a few points that I like to point out, because this article is extremely well put. I believe Kyle Korver, who is a member of the Utah Jazz again in the National Basketball Association, once again he's found his way back to be a member of the Jazz again, and he's one of the fiercest shooters out in the game in the past 10, I believe this is his 11th or 12th season, but in the past 10 years, he's one of the most lethal and, fascinated cats to watch off the screen. I mean, he can light it up. But I feel this is his biggest moment, because he's put something on his back where this is not a regular thing, but it should go as a regular thing. He's brought the humanity back to the status quo we live in today when it comes to race issues. And it shouldn't be a race issue. It should be a human issue. It should be something that we look at as issues with fellow human beings. But where we at is white and black, or white and brown. He describes in this article how he felt he had been wanting to write this for a while. And if you ain't heard, Russell Westbrook, who plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder, point guard, Mr. Triple Double, he had an encounter with a Jazz fan. And during that encounter, it was all blown out to proportion before we heard his side. The media, of course, they caught the end where he was being very exploitive and showed to be real upset. And without really knowing the story, again, this is what Kyle Korver admits to assuming himself. You're blaming the one that's acting out of character, in a sense. And so he decided, to, put his words out there, his feelings, his true feelings. And if you're going to represent him and wear his jersey, you need to know this about him. And this is a huge deal because he is a white American. And that's the other thing I want to point out too. When he describes the other color race, he uses the word American. And I applaud him for this because this is something that I battled and dealt with all my life, and I still today. He says Black American and he says white American. And to me, what that symbolizes is real unity. We're Americans. We have different shades. So let's keep it that way so we can enable some change and solvency to actually take place and happen. But it starts with listening. So in his article, he wants to listen, and he wants us to listen, and I want us to listen. And I'm challenging my listeners to listen and to read this article for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm just expressing my appreciation. And he's calling out the struggle that it is that I've encountered and I still encounter. And I appreciate Kyle Korver for being transparent, being responsible, holding himself accountable, as he mentions. So a few things I want to, like I said earlier, I wanted to talk about, and I already touched one, and that's how he's uniting people. He's humanizing the situation by saying he's keeping both sides inclusive to this by saying Black Americans and white Americans. And I really appreciate that again. And one of the things I want to touch that's important here is when he played with the Hawks. And if you don't know, he had a fellow teammate, Tablo Cephalosha. He's I believe his mother is from Switzerland and his father's from South Africa. So he's an interracial man. He's not from here. He played overseas, and then his first year when he got to the NBA, I believe he started with Oklahoma City Thunder, and he's bounced around. And he's actually a current teammate in Utah with Kyle again. And they became really close friends, over the years when they were in Atlanta when they played for the Hawks. Well, there was an incident. He was out at a club in New York, and I believe it was in New York. And he got into an incident. I guess the police showed up. There was supposed to be a fight, and they picked him out. Now, he's a fair-skinned brother, but you can tell the features. They picked him out, and he ended up getting his leg broke. I believe it was his fibia. So he sat out for the rest of that year. He had the surgery. He settled in a civil case, and it was pretty much brushed under the rug because it was settled. So that lets us know that there was someone in the wrong. But as we typically see, when the wrong is on the side of the ones causing the inequality, it gets pushed away. We don't hear from it no more. And that's just not me saying it. That's fact you can find. However, this was brushed under the rug, and until this Westbrook incident, Kyle has decided to really express how he felt in the initial reaction and how he views this as the problem, and how we need to learn more and study more and find out about oppression and inequalities. And we really need to listen and play a part and hold ourselves accountable, which he quotes, hold him and his fellow white men, people, Americans accountable. It's time. And his first reaction to when he heard about his friend getting hemmed up by the police was, what is, and I quote, what is Tablo out there doing at the club? Instead of, wow, I know him. This is my friend. And this is just me talking. I know him. This is my friend. You know, he talks about the relationship he's had with him and, you know, his intellectual conversation. So you would think immediately, and, you know, he's not a criminal. He's an NBA player. He's been in the league 7+ years. No outside records that the public knows about besides this one and only. And yet he didn't come to the conclusion, like, why was he treated in such a way to where he got put in jail and he's injured during the altercation? He thought right away, what was he doing? So he quote says that he blamed the victim first. And this is where he wanted to get away from. This is why he chose to write this article. And again, I commend him for putting this target on his back, on his jersey now, on his persona, on his person. And so that's the one thing. Like he like many people who aren't on the side of the inequality and or oppression just a victim in general. We tend to have a culture these days of just blaming the victim. And I don't want to touch all the other victim topics, but you know what it is. So he found that he had to look within himself right away and say, hey, you know, I'm part of the problem. Because another thing I want to point out too, he used the words opt in and opt out. And he looked at himself and said, I'm part of the problem because I look like the fans. And I play and work in a community and a league of men who represent 75% of it as brown individuals. Majority. Yet he still feels privileged. And the reason he feels privileged is because he can make a statement. He can be an ally. But then, as he describes it, he can just fade away into the crowd. You know? I think it's important we hear this part of, we really key in on this part of the article, because the conversations I have with people who don't understand me is that very thing that I wanted to describe. And he said the words where you can be supportive, right? You can wake up having that on your mind and saying, hey, you know what? There's some inequalities that I believe should be addressed, and there's some things that aren't fair. But you don't naturally have to wake up and deal with them on a daily. I mean, the best way I can describe it from my perspective, and I thought about this a lot, it still may not be the best way that I want to, but it's a way that I figured, where I was talking to a friend of mine, shout out D Shabazz for. I was talking to him and we were talking about how we were raised. And one point that he had made that I recognized was very interesting. Like, we always live on this instinctual surviving mode. And I can't imagine just always being in that mode. So anytime I walk out the door, I'm in survival mode. I mean, when I wake up, I'm in survival mode. And, you know, I was telling him about a joke where we got here. I was telling him about a joke about this white guy. He made a joke about, you know, the reason why white people climb rocks and just challenge nature and animals or what have you is because there's no fear of being a white person. And it was a joke, but it was a lot of, I understood the reality of that. So the way I look at it as, I got to walk out the door with constant fight or flight, aka anxiety, always in survival mode. So it deters a lot of things I do. It influences it influences a lot of my moves that I make, a lot of do's and don'ts, unfortunately. So am I living up to my best potential? You know, how am I being looked at? I'm always thinking about how I'm being looked at. And white America, majority of white America, all of my encounters, they don't feel that way as I do. And these are my these are my experiences. These are my facts. I believe everyone has some kind of form of anxiety, but it has to be triggered. There's one thing to have triggered anxiety, fight or flight, and there's one thing to wake up with just it on you all day. I can't ever wash it off, turn it off. I mean, I can self-talk and do all these things. I was taught to be able to exist as who I am when I go out in the world, but still, it's something that's conditioned. It's been indoctrinated in me since the beginning. So he was, getting back to him talking. Yeah, he can support, he can be an ally, but at any time he can opt out. He can opt in for as long as he wants. But as soon as he's ready to turn it off, that's exactly what'll happen. It won't follow. He won't have to live up to the expectations of what he said, or, he won't have to be pro whatever it was. He won't be held accountable. And that's what he wants to stop. He wants to hold white American men especially accountable. And I applaud him for that. I thank him for being able to articulate his feelings, his views in such a manner where it humanizes the situation. And that's what I want to stay on. It humanizes the situation. And this has a lot to do with where I want this program that I've created, IGSTS, I got something to say, when I talk about being heard and not being first, because we spend a lot of time saying what we think instead of what we know. And like I'm doing this here, a lot of people have the opportunity to voice their opinion, but are they voicing ethically what's actually happening? So I just want this production here to be the most ethical and factual programming, because I believe it's important. And even now is the time, like Kyle mentions in his article, we have to listen. But where do we choose, and how do we choose who to listen to? So getting back to what he was talking about, opting in and opting out, this is very important. The reason why I feel it's very important, because this is the very thing I have to talk to my kids about. I was talking to my daughter recently, and she described how her teacher, I believe this was her history teacher, had kept saying African American, African American. And she decided to stand up and challenge that. And I'm very proud that she did so. And she said, why do you keep calling them African American? You don't say European American when you describe white people. You don't say Irish American. And that's true. And it goes back to opting in and opting out, where you can be aware and speak on it and say, hey, that's not right. But then you can just fade right off into the status of, I don't wake up with the pressures and the anxieties and the fight or flight and the grounding and the cultural step out the door where I gotta make sure I live right so I don't encounter life as it may come to hurt me or take me out. And when she, I appreciate her teacher too and he's a white American. I appreciate him for allowing her to speak on that and listening to her, because his response was, "You're right. You're 100,000% right," as she says. And he made the effort to not address black men as African American. And he asked her, "Well, what can I call them?" And she just simply said, black American. And so, I find this is where when you want to create solvency or have solvency, this is how you start it. You really have to unite the situation. You have to make it important to everyone. You have to make it inclusive. And this is something that I value, and this is what I want to bring with my show, with this program, IGSTS. I got something to say. I want this to be inclusive to the people who know me personally, the people who don't know me, the people who like the way my voice sounds, the people who like the way or like the things I talk about, who don't like the way my voice sounds, who want to speak on what they don't like what I say. I welcome that. I want this to be inclusive because now's the time to listen. I want to listen, and I want people to listen. And when you make humanity inclusive, then we can start working on solvency and how to, let's see, is fix the word? I can say, yeah, you could say that. How to fix, because it's broken. It's broken. So, getting back to this article, he spoke about, I'm not going to opt out anymore. I'm going to opt in. And those who know who I am, I want you to know this about me. He repeatedly says this towards the end of the article. And it's amazing, even at this time, all that this country has been through. We're still at a point where we've talked about doing this and we haven't established any type of action yet. And I'm really interested in what's going to be made of this. If this is going to be one of those things that opt out and get pushed right into the crowd as he speaks. So I'm making it my job and my effort to help with it opting in. And I ask that all the listeners who hear this, go and read this article. You can find it online. The Players Tribune, Privileged by Kyle Korver. Go check it out. It's a good read. I was very enlightened about it, because although he recognizes his privilege, I don't know what his privilege is like. And when I said at the top of the show where I was saying I believe I have privilege, I've always said my privilege is the fact that I'm aware that privilege is a thing and it's not technically applied to me. And to know how I'm perceived in the world, I believe that's a privilege. Although I'm not inclusive to a fair chance, a first chance, I would say. Fair is a place to play, but a first chance, as a constitutional right. I'm aware of this, But it doesn't stop me from, it shouldn't stop me from proceeding in life with a first chance attitude. But someone like me and many others that look like me and feel like me and have experiences like me, we have to work harder. We have to find out how to walk forward like that. And, you know, that's character building. There's nothing wrong with that either. And it's not saying all brown people, you know, I one day I hope to have and to be able to create a wealth of privilege for my kids so they don't have to walk in my shoes. And with white Americans, I mean, that's what we do when we have kids and we have families. We want to build a legacy. So the generations who come after us don't have to walk in non-privileged situations, because that seems to be one of the human qualities that we have. We always want to get better and do better. You hear the guys in sports when they're asked about a loss or even a win. We just got to go back, look at the film so we can get better. Seems redundant and cliche, but it's the truth. I want to get better. I want my kids to live better, to have better, to not encounter these inequalities that they hear about, that I've been through, that I experienced. I want them to have a first shot at life, to do, feel, speak, live how they want, safely, respectably, with the condition of being humanized. So, yeah, I appreciate those who either are forced to click on this or clicked on this, who just came across it. They took the time just to listen. You know, I welcome your comments, so please leave the comments. Please subscribe to the J Floss YouTube channel if you don't mind. Hit the like button. I really like to listen and hear what you all out there have to say. I want to leave it kind of open. I don't want to add too much of my thoughts. That's why I want to stick to a couple points. There's a lot to read in this article, and I just want to express my appreciation again to Kyle Korver and the Utah Jazz organization, because he represents them. And I really challenge those who feel, you know, they're discriminated by having the word privilege attached to their name, because again, that's not a reality either. The stamp of inequality and non-privilege is stamped on me, but I'm here right now on the mic speaking, using my privilege, free speech. And so again, I want to make this inclusive. I want people to, to chime in on this, who feel, they've been placed, the word privilege has been placed upon them, in a way where it's offensive to them, because they feel they work hard, and there are people out there like that. I agree. Brown people are considered lazy. I work hard. I serve the country. I spent 4 years in the United States Air Force. I did my due diligence, but I don't use as a privilege to say and do whatever I want. I still have to work. I still have to apply myself, and I still have to do it all with all the stipulations placed on me from birth. There's video proof out there how white Americans and black Americans are treated differently. So I just challenge you all And I thank you all for listening in. I challenge you all to go read this article. It's a very well put. Like I said, he really placed his feelings and thoughts very well in this article, very intellectually, very expressive, and very, the key word, he humanized this whole situation, the status quo in which we live today as far as race relations and inequality. So I thank y'all for listening on this April 2019 day, and tune in. We got a lot coming up for y'all. Like I said, we talk to be heard, not to be first. And thank y'all for tuning in to IGSTS. I got something to say. I'm Jay Floss, and I'm out. Y'all take care. Thank you.
But wait. Hold up. I got one more special shout out to send out to another member of the IGSTS I Got Something to Say team. That's I Am Martin Ross. What's up, man? Good looking again. Appreciate y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed the show. Hit that like button so I can give you some more. Appreciate it. Subscribe too. Y'all have a good one. Peace.